A high-end, world-renowned restaurant is supposed to offer an atmosphere of warmth, elegance, and genuine hospitality, a place where every guest, regardless of how they are dressed when they step in from the rain, is treated with complete courtesy. But for one head maitre d', hospitality was never about making guests feel welcome. It was a tool used to decide who was worthy of sitting in the dining room and who deserved to be hidden away out of sight. A young woman wearing a simple dark waterproof jacket, dark denim trousers, and practical flat boots walked through the heavy mahogany doors of the city's most celebrated fine dining establishment. She shook off her umbrella and quietly asked to sit at the small two-person table near the floor-to-ceiling conservatory window. The head host looked her up and down once, offered a thin, mechanical smile, and informed her that the window tables were strictly reserved for the restaurant's most distinguished long-term patrons. He then gestured toward a tiny, noisy table positioned directly adjacent to the swinging kitchen doors and service station, suggesting she could either take that seat or try her luck at a casual diner down the block. What he didn't know was that the woman he had just casually dismissed had signed the final closing documents less than 4 hours earlier, making her the chief executive and majority shareholder of the entire hospitality group that owned the restaurant, the building, and 6 other Michelin-starred venues across the continent. Before we get into the full story, comment down below where you are watching from today, and subscribe to Silent Empire so you never miss an episode. Now, let's get into it. Laubirch had stood in the heart of the city's historical district for over 30 years. It was an institution built on culinary excellence, quiet luxury, and an elite reservation system that was booked solid 3 months in advance. The interior featured hand-carved oak paneling, crystal chandeliers, and a famous conservatory window overlooking a secluded courtyard garden. For nearly 10 of those years, the front-of-house operations were managed by a man named Antoine Laurent. Antoine considered himself the gatekeeper of the restaurant's reputation. He frequently boasted to his hosting staff that a restaurant's prestige wasn't built merely on the food created in the kitchen, but on the visual quality of the people sitting at the tables. To Antoine, a guest's value was determined in seconds. If a guest arrived in tailored designer wear, custom jewelry, and carrying recognizable luxury handbags, they were escorted to the prized conservatory window tables. If someone walked in wearing plain, practical clothes, Antoine made it his personal mission to tuck them away in the back corners where high-paying regulars wouldn't have to see them. What Antoine failed to realize was that real power in the modern business world rarely feels the need to dress for an audience, and nobody exemplified that quiet power better than Elena Rostova. Elena was 34 years old. She was the founder of a boutique private equity firm specializing in culinary acquisitions, historical property preservation, and luxury hospitality turnarounds. Over a decade of quiet, brilliant deal-making, she had built a portfolio that generated tens of millions in annual revenue. Despite her immense success, Elena remained deeply practical. Raised in a modest working-class family by a mother who ran a small neighborhood bakery, Elena valued substance over pretense. She preferred comfortable clothes, walked everywhere when she could, and frequently conducted high-level site inspections entirely unannounced and completely alone. At 1:15 p.m. on a windy, rain-swept Tuesday afternoon, Elena stepped out of the downpour and into the quiet, hushed luxury of Laubirch. She held a damp umbrella in one hand and a simple leather folder under her arm. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her dark waterproof jacket was simple and unbranded, and her boots were wet from walking 4 blocks from her parking garage. She stood near the host stand, waiting patiently while Antoine finished adjusting a floral arrangement near the main archway. When Antoine finally turned, his eyes flicked over her damp coat, her plain dark trousers, and the flat boots resting on the pristine marble entrance. His expression immediately settled into a cold, patronizing mask. "Good afternoon," Antoine said, his voice carrying a cultivated, distant formality. "May I help you locate someone, or are you delivering documents for management?" Elena offered a polite, calm smile. "Good afternoon. I'd like to have a quiet lunch today, please. The table near the conservatory window looks lovely if it's available." Antoine let out a brief, quiet exhale, a practiced sound meant to convey mild exhaustion at a naive request. "The conservatory window," Antoine said, leaning over the podium slightly. "I'm afraid that table is completely out of the question, mademoiselle. Those tables are held exclusively for our primary account holders and distinguished guests who hold active house reservations." Elena looked across the dining room. The conservatory table was set for two, clean, and completely unoccupied. "The dining room appears quite open this afternoon, and I see no reservation tag on that table. I'm happy to enjoy a quick 40-minute meal." Antoine's smile thinned into a tight line of annoyance. "Mademoiselle, let me be completely transparent with you so we avoid an unnecessary misunderstanding. L'Auberge maintains a specific atmosphere for our clientele. We cater to individuals who appreciate fine dining and dress accordingly for the experience." He gestured vaguely toward her damp coat. "We do have a small table available near the service hallway, adjacent to the pantry. Otherwise, I would be glad to point you toward a very charming bistro 2 streets over that caters to casual walk-ins." Elena didn't move an inch. "You haven't asked for my name, nor have you checked the reservation log. You've simply decided based on my raincoat that I don't belong near your window." Antoine's eyes flashed with sharp irritation. "I have managed this floor for 10 years, mademoiselle. I do not need a reservation log to judge whether a guest fits the profile of our dining room. Now, if you wish to take the seat near the hallway, please step this way. Otherwise, I must ask you to keep the entrance clear for our arriving guests." Before Antoine could usher her toward the back hallway, the heavy double doors of the main kitchen swung open. Chef Jean-Luc, the legendary executive chef and longtime co-owner of L'Auberge, walked out onto the dining floor, wiping his hands on a pristine white apron. Behind him was Henri Mercer, the regional operations director for the parent restaurant group, looking visibly anxious and holding a thick blue leather document folder. Antoine immediately straightened his shoulders, adopting a posture of crisp authority. "Ah, Chef Jean-Luc. Mr. Mercer. Perfect timing. I am just handling a minor walk-in situation at the front desk so the dining floor remains completely undisturbed for our afternoon service." Neither Jean-Luc nor Henri paid the slightest attention to Antoine's words. Henri's eyes swept past the podium and landed directly on Elena. His face went pale, and he immediately quickened his pace across the polished wood floor. "Miss Rostova!" Henri exclaimed, his voice tight with nervous urgency as he stopped in front of her and offered a deep, respectful nod. "My deepest apologies. The traffic near the bridge was atrocious, and Chef Jean-Luc and I were finalizing the kitchen inventory walkthrough upstairs. We had no idea you had already arrived." Antoine froze. His hand, still resting on the podium edge, went rigid. "Henri, excuse me, but do you know this visitor? She was just insisting on sitting at the conservatory window without a reservation." Chef Jean-Luc turned to Antoine, his brow furrowed in absolute disbelief. "Antoine, hold your tongue this instant." "I beg your pardon," Chef Antoine stammered, his smooth accent cracking as confusion washed over his face. "I was simply maintaining our floor seating protocol regarding unreserved walk-ins who do not meet our dress standards." "She doesn't need a dress standard or a reservation, Antoine," Henri interrupted sharply, his voice echoing across the quiet dining room, causing several seated patrons to look over. Miss Rostova is the managing director of the Apex Hospitality Trust. As of 10 o'clock this morning, her firm completed the purchase of a 75% controlling interest in our entire restaurant group. She owns Lauberch, the land beneath it, and every asset in this building. The air seemed to leave the room in a single, heavy gasp. Antoine stood frozen as if carved from ice. His gaze drifted from Henry's furious face down to the legal documents in the blue folder, where Elena's signature sat in bold black ink above the company seal. She owns the group. Antoine whispered, his voice barely audible as his face drained of all color. That isn't possible. Internal announcements are never made without a formal regional briefing. Miss Rostova requested an unannounced visit specifically, Chef Jean-Luc said coldly, looking at Antoine with deep shame. She wanted to see how a guest walking in off the street in simple attire was received by our front-of-house management. Elena stepped forward slowly, her hands folded calmly over her folder. She looked at Antoine, her voice low, measured, and entirely free of malice. In less than 3 minutes, Mr. Laurent, Elena said quietly, you decided that because my coat was wet and my boots were flat, I was unworthy of sitting near a window in a restaurant I now own. You didn't offer a warm greeting. You didn't offer to check my coat. You simply tried to hide me near the kitchen doors because I didn't match your idea of wealth. Antoine swallowed hard, his hands trembling against the mahogany desk. Miss Rostova, please. I had no idea who you were. If I had known your position, I would have cleared the entire conservatory section for your private party immediately. And that, Elena interrupted softly, is precisely why you are unfit to manage this floor. Hospitality that is reserved only for the wealthy isn't hospitality at all. It is vanity. That afternoon, Elena sat quietly at the conservatory window table, enjoying a simple lunch prepared by Chef Jean-Luc while reviewing the location's historical customer service logs with Henri. The subsequent investigation revealed a long, troubling history. Over 40 written complaints had been recorded over the past 4 years from ordinary guests who had been insulted, seated in dark corners, or turned away entirely by Antoine Laurent simply because they didn't meet his superficial visual criteria. By the end of the week, Antoine Laurent was officially removed from his position as head maitre d'. The restaurant group launched a complete retraining program across all 6 locations, establishing strict new guidelines to ensure every guest was treated with equal dignity and warmth. People who use superficial appearances to judge others almost always fail to see the true strength standing right in front of them. Never measure a person's worth by the clothes on their back or the quiet way they enter a room. You never know if the person standing in the damp raincoat is the one who owns the entire house. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe to Silent Empire for more stories of quiet strength, sudden turns, and ultimate accountability. See you in the next one.